The U.S.-Russia Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, the New START, or START III, was signed by the leaders of the two nations in Prague on 8 April 2010. On February 5, 2011, the treaty entered into force. The New START agreement was developed on the basis of strict parity in accordance with the principle of equal and indivisible security. The treaty was to remain in force for 10 years, with the option to extend it for up to 5 years. The treaty provides for tangible, verifiable, and irreversible strategic offensive arms reductions. As a result of these reductions, 7 years after entry into force of the treaty, the aggregate numbers of strategic offensive arms held by each party were not to exceed 700 for deployed ICBMs, deployed SLBMs, and deployed heavy bombers, 1,550 for warheads on deployed ICBMs, warheads on deployed SLBMs, and nuclear warheads counted for deployed heavy bombers, 800 for deployed and non-deployed ICBM launchers, deployed and non-deployed SLBM launchers, and deployed and non-deployed heavy bombers. Thus, Russia and the U.S. were to reduce the number of warheads they held by 1/3 and the number of strategic delivery vehicles by more than half. At the same time, each party was to have the right to determine for itself the composition and structure of its strategic offensive arms. According to the U.S. Department of State's data on the implementation of the New START, as of March 1, 2020, the U.S. had 655 deployed nuclear warhead delivery systems, while Russia had 485. The number of warheads on deployed delivery vehicles was 1,373 for the United States and 1,326 for Russia. The total number of deployed and non-deployed launchers of ICBMs and SLBMs in the United States was 800, while Russia had 754. The New START expires in February next year, but the parties have not yet been able to agree on an extension, which is very dangerous and could lead to an uncontrolled escalation of tensions and global nuclear conflict in the near future. The experts of the International Luxembourg Forum on Preventing Nuclear Catastrophe, one of the major non-governmental organizations bringing together leading international experts on non-proliferation of nuclear weapons, arms reduction, and limitation, have repeatedly stressed the importance of bilateral dialogue on this issue and the renewal of the treaty.
The first important step that we need to take in U.S.-Russia relations, I think, is to extend START III, which expires in about, in 2021. So we don't have a lot of time, but we do have time. So we need to extend that for 5 years, and then we move on to try to negotiate another more ambitious agreement between our countries and possibly find ways to bring China into the conversation, the dialogue, and possibly even into a negotiation with Russia and the United States.
Well, I think it certainly should. Objectively, I think it serves both countries' interests. I still retain some hope that rational decision-making will prevail and that we will see an extension of New START. I don't think there is any logic to not extending the treaty. Unfortunately, we increasingly see non-rational actions taking place on almost a daily basis. So I must say I don't have great confidence that it will be extended, but I think it certainly should be.
I am in favour of it being extended because it allows a degree of verification and inspection that we've never had before. And if we want to be safe, we need to be very transparent. So of course we should. I mean, we may end up very soon in a situation where we have no arms control for strategic weapons, specifically for strategic weapons, or for that matter really any weapons, because we've lost a lot of it, and we've nothing in the pipeline.
Это просто непременное условие. Если закончится СНВ-3, мы окажемся в вакууме договорно-правового характера, а гонка вооружений спать и ждать не будет. Она наберет такие темпы, что мы потом никогда уже с ней не совладаем.
Well, I think it will be a very good thing if it is, because it is the last one that remains, the last constraint that remains in the deployment of weapons, at least in Europe, weapons of a medium range. If the New START treaty disappears, there will be no constraint whatsoever on either side. And that would not be good. I think that would be a pity if this happens.
Absolutely. It's utterly critical, because if we lose this last pillar of the arms control regime that we spent 50 years creating, arduously and sometimes painfully from a political point of view, then strategic nuclear arms control, not just between the United States and Russia, but the prospect of nuclear arms control among the remaining new nuclear powers is dead. Strategic stability will be imperiled. The risk of nuclear war at some level between some countries will increase, and we will be living in a different world.
So it's very important to try and salvage the START treaty between America and Russia. It expires in 2021, which is in 2 years' time. So we need to try and salvage it, and we need to try to keep alive at least the principle of the INF treaty, which prevents the deployment of more medium-range missiles in Europe.
Since 2018, Russia has repeatedly raised the issue of the need to start discussing the extension of the New START beyond February 5, 2021. Unfortunately, the United States has not yet made any official statements about its decision regarding the extension of the treaty. Following up on the outcomes of the meeting of the Luxembourg Forum Supervisory Board in Geneva in December 2019, the forum's experts advised the leaders of Russia and the United States to extend the New START and initiate negotiations on a follow-up treaty.
Если не будет никаких позитивных подвижек в этих направлениях, нам нужно самим заранее предусматривать разработку таких предложений и действий, которые в дальнейшем хотя бы в минимальной степени были бы способны сдерживать рост энтропии, а по сути хаоса, сохранить ряд принципов стратегической стабильности. Например, в случае прекращения действия договора СНВ-3 в 2021 году рекомендовать США и России сохранить ряд положений по транспарентности из этого договора, уведомлять стороны о проведении пусков МБР и носителей космических аппаратов, о стратегических учениях и других шагах в этой сфере, не осуществлять ряд мер по маскировке объектов стратегических вооружений от национальных средств космической разведки и тому подобное.
At the beginning of 2020, the hands of the doomsday clock were set at 100 seconds to midnight by the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. And if the world's leaders do not have sufficient political will and prudence, then very soon a nuclear midnight could descend upon the world, after which there will be nothing left and it will be too late for negotiations.